Hi everyone and welcome back to the How to Craft Network. My name is Claire Manning from Thirsty Brush and I'm going to do a card making demonstration for you, hopefully showing something that you might have in your craft stash but to maybe use in a different way than you thought of before. So I hope you have your cup of tea ready and you're having a nice relaxing Sunday. It's the week before Easter, and things start to ease. We can do, is it rule of 6 outside we can do from Monday, Tuesday? I'm getting very confused. I will have to check it out, but that's a start, isn't it? And we'll be getting there slowly. So let me show you first the Thirsty Brush designs I'm going to use in case you have them. I know a lot of these are now sold out because we recently did a sale. But don't worry if you haven't got anything, you don't need these specific ones. It's more about the techniques, and then if you do have these, you can recreate the card exactly. So I'm going to use the Bright Border Stamp and Die set, the Bubbles stencil, and the Just a Note die set there. So I'm going to use that part, definitely. I'm not sure about the other bits just yet. And definitely the Stamp and Die on that, but not right this moment. So, and I'm going to use this stencil. So something you may have in your stash is something like Nuvo drops or some other kind of embellishment drops or liquid that dry to these kind of hard. Let me just show you a quick bit just in case you haven't seen this kind of product before. There's all sorts of different variations of this, colours, different textures. Some of them matte drying, some of them are super glossy. You can do large, small dots. And it's just an alternative to something like a sequin or something like that. And they do level out. You can see the better your technique, you will get a super smooth dot, but they do dry flat as well. So I've got a couple here. These are the matte vintage ones. I think the crystal ones are the shiny, but there's loads of different brands that do them as well. But I really liked the kind of matte and vintagey kind of colours of these ones. So I'm actually going to use them through a stencil just to show you that they're not just for these dots and embellishments, but we can do something a little bit different with them as well. So first of all, I'm going to cut this note die from a piece of white card. And the reason I'm doing this before stenciling rather than after is that these vintage, the Nuvo drops or anything like this does take a little while to dry. So obviously it's just going to smudge to hell if I then try and put it through my die cut machine after. So I thought if I die cut it now, and then we can play around with the stencil. If you're happy to leave it to dry and then die cut, you can do that too. But obviously filming here, I don't have that luxury of time. So this gives a really cool kind of notebook, as if you've torn that out of a notebook, and that kind of shredded appearance, which is really, really nice. I'm going to pop a spare piece of card or paper. In fact, let me just use a piece of scrap printer paper, so I'm not using my precious cardstock, just to save my surface a little bit. And let's layer over, that needs a bit of a wipe, doesn't it? So I'm going to kind of put the die cut at a slight angle and then the stencil straight. I just didn't want it to look too like regimented. In fact, shall I? Just thinking how I want this to, the pattern to lie. I think I like that. don't think I like things that look too geometrical for things like this. Okay, and then do I need to mask off any areas that I don't want on there? I think I'm pretty happy for the majority of that die cut to be covered. I think I'm just going to use the green today, but of course you can mix colours as well if you put a little bit of Nuvo drops in an area and then put another colour. So I'm just squeezing into each area that I want to use a fair amount. So if you haven't got things like stencil pastes, that kind of look, maybe you haven't got those in your stash but you've got something like this, then you can still use these to get a texture on your cards. Making sure I put plenty on. And then I'm going to use a little palette knife and I'm going to smooth that over. So like I say, this is a matte finish one. It does say it takes up to 48 hours to get the full dried matte finish. It will be dry to the touch before then, probably a couple of hours. And I'll have an experiment for you with this in a little while, where I'll see whether a heat gun will speed that up for us. Just adding some more in certain areas where it looks like it needs it. Just to try and get it pretty even. But you can have it nice and smooth, you could have it all textured, however you want. Try not to get any big lines from my palette knife. Okay, let's have a look, see what that looks like. Just wipe my palette knife down. Keep those bits of tape for a die cut later on. Wow, that looks pretty cool, doesn't it? So I have still got some kind of marks in my palette knife, but I don't mind that. That adds texture. You could spend a bit more time or add a bit more of the drops to get that a smoother look. But that looks a bit different and a bit quirky, so I'm quite happy with that. Let's get rid of that, and I want to wipe down my stencil. Now it does dry hard like your pastes if you use those glitter pastes and things like that, so it's important to get it off your stencil using a damp cloth or a baby wipe straight away so it doesn't really dry into that stencil and ruin it. Okay, I'm just going to leave that to dry. I'll see how that goes, just dry naturally while we do the rest of the card. If I need to speed it up a bit with a heat gun, we'll give that a go a bit later. But let's pop that aside, and shall we stamp out this lovely border. And I'm just going to stamp and do some add some very basic colour. It's not really about the colouring. In terms of colouring and stamping this card, it's more about the techniques there for your stencils. But if you're interested in other videos with different colouring techniques, whether it's watercolours, alcohol markers, all that kind of stuff, then do check out other videos on the channel, either from myself or Tony, or my Clay Manning Craft channel. There's absolutely tons there on loads of different colouring techniques. So I've done the main border that coordinates with the die, and then can you see you get these extra little flowers? I may add some of those. I haven't fully decided yet, but let's stamp them out If I don't use them on this card, I'm sure I'll use them on something else. So I'm just going in with my stamping tool, and I'm just going to simply stamp in black today. This is going to be like a bold, quite modern looking card. Again, this bright border is something that you may have had from our earlier releases or picked up in our sale. And now I'll just wipe down my stamp. Stamps, if you look after them and wipe them down, they really can last a lifetime. So it's worth taking the extra few minutes, well, a few seconds really, isn't it? Just to wipe them down and look after them. Okie dokie. Okay, I'm going to die cut those before colouring just to get that part out of the way. So within the set, let's just find the dies. So you can cut out the central portion if you want and have a sentiment coming from underneath. I'm just going to use this outer one and the two little flowers, and then there's also a kind of matte layer one as well if you wanted to build that up, but we're going to pop it on top of that stencil background, so I don't really need that right this minute, but it's there for you to give you loads of options. So just lining up the outline dies, so no laborious fussy cutting. And I'll run those through. So I have got a pot of water, but I'm not doing traditional watercolouring or anything like that like my other videos today. I'm going to use my Distress Oxides to add some really simple colour to my design. And I'm going to try and tone them with this Nuvo drops. So that's the colour of my drops. And I've picked out a few colours from my Distress Oxides. So just decide which ones. I think definitely that Twisted Citron gives that a bit of zing. Let's definitely use the Kitsch Flamingo, which is the new one, and the yellow. Should we just leave it at that or add in? Yeah, I'm just going to leave it at that. I think it might get a bit too crazy otherwise. So what I like to do a lot is use these oxide colours as a kind of paint, if you like. So on a piece of acetate, or if you have a glass mat, or the top of your stamping tool, anything that's a smooth surface, I'm going to squidge on a little bit of each. So I've got squeezed lemon, beautiful new Kitsch Flamingo, and the Twisted Citron. Wow, that's bright, isn't it? And you can mix on here like a little palette, or you can use them as they are. So I'm just a little damp brush, nothing too crazy, and just add it, and it gives a kind of matte finish. compared to if you use the distress inks to do this rather than the oxides. They give more of a kind of translucent watercolory look, and the oxides give that matte finish. So I do prefer oxides anyway. I just like the look of them. But also, Nuvo drops are matte because they're the vintage ones. So I thought that, again, that really ties in together. So I'm just very simply adding washes of colour. No light or shade. Nothing fancy at all. Just very simple colouring with a little brush. Not even worrying too much about keeping in the lines. We're just giving a hint of colour to the design. Bit of yellow. And they're all nice soft colours. So it's not fighting too much with the zing of our background with that bubble stencil. Let's mix a bit. This should give us a nice like peachy colour if I mix the yellow squeezed lemonade with the Kitsch Flamingo. Oh yeah, I like that. So it just gives some different tones again. Can't decide whether I even want to add those. Let's pop a bit of colour on them just in case. But like I say, I'm not sure if I'm going to use them. You could use that, spray it with some more water and kind of smush it for, in fact, should we do that? That might make a nice final background to tie it all together. Just get my water spray. So yeah, it's always such a shame to waste any ink and just get rid of that. So if we spray it a little bit to allow for some movement, and then let's pop a piece of card. Even if you don't end up using it on this card, it can give you a nice soft watercolory background. For another card if you want. I did quite a lot of water there, so it is just really soft and subtle. But you can go in with less water if you want a more bold look. Just mop up any excess now. So I can leave that to dry and trim that down. So we've got our accents. How's this doing? It's almost dry to the touch, or I've just made a little bit, not quite yet, but we've still got a couple of bits to do before we put everything together anyway. We need a sentiment. So this is a nice space for stamping a load of kind of just word sentiments. I thought I'd do something a little bit bolder and a little bit different than you might expect, and I thought I'll use the just a note to show that you can layer on dies as well in this area, and it kind of overlapped the design a bit and it still looked really cool. So you get just a note and you get the outer die as well. So I'm going to cut the outline from black and the just a note from my favourite holographic. Just trim that down a bit so I can get them both to go through one pass of the die machine. And run those through. that's drying off nicely. So we've got that. And the just a note. Just pop that out. Just need my pokey tool just for those little areas in the word. Okay. So I think we've got almost everything we need now to start construction. So I've got a 5x7 card blank. I'm going to add on a black matte layer just to tone everything together with this black. So we've got, I always think about what is a kind of accent colour, if you like. We've got lots of softs, we've got lots of pastels and the toning greens and pinks and things like that. And we've got black in the stamping and black in this. Personally, I don't mix things like you'll have black and then you'll have grey and then you'll have maybe gold and all that kind of stuff. I'm not saying those colours don't go together, but I find you get a more cohesive look if you tone in things like your basic matten layer, a matten layer of some kind of die cut, and whatever colour you've stamped with. It just brings things together and gives a really clean, professional look. So I'm just going to grab some more black card for that matten layer. Okay, just glue that on. And then I'm going to need to trim down this background to fit on top of this, but leave the mil or two border round. And that's just going to allow that black then to just frame all the other elements of your card. So I'll just trim that down. Okay, so I've trimmed down that piece to fit nicely in there. I think this may have to be the size of that stamp and die. I think it's going to have to be a landscape card. But obviously if you want to use a larger card blank, you can do it portrait way up as well. So I quite like how that's ended up, that this part is less watery than that part, so it just gives an extra little focal point, if you like. And then we can add on, yeah, it's just about dry to the touch enough for me to construct it. But obviously you may not be pushed for time as much at home, and you can leave it that bit longer. So let's do it slightly at an angle. And then I'm just going to curl up some of these bits a little bit, just to give it some extra dimension. Get the sentiment ready. On its lovely background dye there. Just makes that really pop. And like I say, that black just tones in beautifully then. Squidged a bit of glue there, but that will dry off nicely. And clear. Should we do it at an angle? I think I'll do it on straight and then have those other little flowers popping out. Like all these pinks and greens together, it feels really springy. Oops. I think that just balances out because that stencil is over there. And let's just finish off with, just thinking, do I go in with the blue? No, let's keep the green because I think that's a real theme. And I'm just going to add on some final detail with the Nuvo drops. So I'm going in on the edge of these little stems on some of these lilac type plants. Just with some small dots. Maybe in the centre of these flowers too. Just to kind of tie that background in with the foreground a little bit more. I like that that background is kind of mixed media-y. Where I've done, it's not absolutely perfect in how I've used the palette knife to spread it out, but you can do it right edge to edge if you prefer that. And there we go. So hopefully that shows you a different way to use your stencils with other mediums that you might have in your stash, like Nuvo drops or something similar. So Nuvo ones are obviously by Tonic. I've had some Dovecraft ones before. They do some coloured drops. I just find these dry quicker and I prefer the colours. But there's all sorts of different brands that do this kind of product. So if you have it lying around, have a go at using it with your stencils. So I hope you enjoyed that, guys. And I will be back with you on Thursday, as always, for Thirsty Thursday before the Easter weekend. So in the meantime, stay safe and have some fun in the sunshine if there is any. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.